Hi, Ollie here at the Crafty Whisk. Thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate you coming by. Today we're going to be starting off my Fun Fold collection. The first one is a Z fold, a nice simple Z fold. They look really effective and they are super easy to make. And they stand up beautifully on your mantelpiece. So they're the three that we're going to be making. Two are angled, one is straight, but I do call them my angled Z folds. And I'll also be putting to the test the new Tim Holtz paper cutting machine. It's not a guillotine, it's more a paper trimmer. And we start off with 8.5 by 11 cardstock, trim it down to 5.5 by 10 7/8. And this trimmer is super easy to use. It's very light. I can actually keep it on my desk rather than on the floor or on a shelf behind me. It's really, really cool. So we're going to score that card at 3 5/8 and 7 1/4 on the long 10 7/8 side. And now we're going to be measuring to make our cuts to make it a Z fold. So we're going to measure up 2 inches on the left side. Make sure you measure it right at the edge of the card. And then we are going to make a cut from that mark to the second score line. If it helps, just draw in pencil the line. And that is your cut line. So you can have 2 of the panels which are angled and 1 which is straight. And just trim that from the pencil mark to the second score line. You can use a guillotine, a metal ruler with a knife, or a paper trimmer, whatever you have to hand. If you did mark it in pencil, just remember to erase that pencil line if there's any there. Now to fold it, we make sure the bottom is lined up perfectly, and we're going to do a fold one way and then the second fold is in the opposite direction, lining up the bottom of the card. And you will have 3 beautiful even segments. So I've already done my stamping and colouring, and I have used for this card Clearly Besotted, Oops-a-Daisy and Rain Down Lineup. The Rain Down Lineup, all I used was the rainbows and clouds, and the Oops-a-Daisy, I pretty much used most of what was in there. The pattern paper I'm using is from Doodlebug, and it's a Dot Stripe Rainbows 6x6 paper pad. And I've pre-cut them into almost the correct sizes. So the front panel, we start with a 3 3/8 by 3 1/2, and we're going to measure up 1 3/4 on the 3 1/2 inch side, which is the left side, and then we are going to cut from the mark we make to the top opposite corner. I know that sounds really convoluting and confusing, but it does get easier the more you do them, or you can do it by eye, which I'll also show you, which can be easier. And if you're decorating the other side, you do the opposite cut. Now the center panel, I of course have made it more difficult for myself, and I wanted the top half to be sky, the bottom half to look like grass. So I'm having to join 2 bits of pattern paper together. And you don't have to use pattern paper if you don't want to. You can just stamp directly onto the card. You can stencil it, you can ink blend it, you can do whatever you want with it. I've gone with pattern paper just so that I can show you the measurements. And this also shows you that you can piece together your paper. So we're going to start with a 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. We're going to measure up 3 3/4 on the left side, which is the 5 1/4 side. And we're going to cut from that pencil mark to the top opposite corner. Or if you're doing it by eye, you lay it down like I have here, and you just come down 1/8 of an inch from the angled card, make a pencil line, and cut from that pencil line to the opposite top corner. Sometimes that does make more sense and is easier, and it sort of it takes the guesswork out of it as well, and you can make the border as big or as little as you want without having to worry about all the mathematics behind it. And you do the opposite cut for the other side. So you measure up on the right hand side instead, and you cut up to the top left corner. The third panel, we're just using a 3 3/8 by 5 1/4 panel of decorative paper. There's no cutting on that whatsoever. And I leave the other side of the third panel blank. I don't put pattern paper down unless I'm using the card base, which is coloured already, and it needs to be white or cream. You can use glue or tape runner, double-sided tape, whatever you fancy to stick all this down. I'm using Barely Art glue today. I'm still giving it a good trial run to see if I like it. And I love the fine tip nozzle, really love it. And so far it hasn't clogged once on me. Whereas I do find my favourite glue, which is the Art Glitter Glue, it does clog in the nozzle every time I go to craft. So I have to get a pin and unclog that nozzle. So the not clogging nozzle is a big thumbs up for me, for sure. Now it is up to you if you want to decorate the back side. I just decorated this centre one. So we start with a 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. Measure up 3 3/4 on the right side, which is the 5 1/4 side, and you're going to cut from your mark to the top left hand corner. Or do it by eye, whichever your preference is. I do both methods. It really depends if I'm in a hurry or if I really want it super duper accurate. And see, the 3 pastel colours look really lovely. It looks very spring-like. And the back panel then is left for putting your sentiments on and writing. So now the fun bit, the decorating bit. I want the clouds to sit half on, half off the back of the card, so you can't see that the card has a straight cut there. So I've just got to trim it down just a little bit, and I'm only putting glue on the bottom half because I do want the top bit to stand up from the card. So I pop that down and then trim off that little bit on the edge, and now it's all flush. And then it's just a matter of choosing where I want to pop all the little chicks. The flowers are gorgeous. I'll list the colours Copics that I used in the description box. And I went for very soft pastel themes. And Orion is helping me yet again, as he does. The hardest bit I found was trying to figure out where to put all the little chicks. And I wanted there to be a little greeting at the front, very front panel of this card. So I had to put the greeting down so I knew which chicks would fit with the greeting if I just had one chick or two chicks. And the greeting I went for is sending smiles. And that was from the Oops Daisy set. Now you don't have to have a MISTI for this. You can just use an acrylic block. But I haven't conditioned these stamps yet, so I thought it's going to have to be stamped twice, so I needed to use my MISTI. And I've used the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink, and I've grabbed the Guava for this one. It's a really lovely pink, and it goes really nicely on the pink pattern paper as well. And yes, I did have to stamp it twice because I haven't conditioned them. Once they're conditioned, you don't need to stamp twice generally. And I love having that sticky grid in my MISTI as well. It eliminates the need, for the most part, for the magnet. And now that the sentiment is there, I'm free to choose which little chicks I want. And it was so hard to choose. They are all so, so cute. And I decided I was going to stick them up onto some foam dots. These are the low loft ones from Snazzi Scrappin. I love these ones. They don't make the card too thick. You do need to be aware though, with these foam dots and this particular style of card, where you are putting your raised elements. If you pop them on that center panel, then it will affect how the card closes. So just bear that in mind when you choose what elements you want where on the card, because we don't want the card getting ruined by the fact that it can't fold correctly on the score lines. And I didn't want there to be that harsh angle on the front panel there either. I wanted to soften it just a little bit. And I thought putting some flowers there would be really, really nice. And don't be afraid to cut apart your stamped images. This one, the die cuts out the flowers on top of the chick's head with the chick, but I didn't like the fact there was so much white in the middle of the flowers and the chick, so I cut the flowers off, and I will fussy cut around the flowers and put them back where they were without that white bit of cardstock being so loud, I suppose, is one of the words I can use. It just seemed to overtake that stamped image a little bit. And it's not hard to do that little bit of fussy cutting. But I did need it to be raised just a fraction because the duck, I'm sorry, not the duck, the chick is on another stamped image, and I have popped on a little bit of foam. So the flowers also need to be on a little bit of foam. And this did make my card a little bit bulky, but it's still folded up fine because I put them on the right hand side. If I had to put them towards the middle, I could have been in a little bit of trouble. And I wanted there to be something on this little bit of blue. And luckily I had cut out two of the little chicks with the umbrella. So it kind of looks like he's floating down from the clouds. Or at least that's the look I was going for anyway. And I can use foam dots here because it is not interfering at all with the closure of the card. So just a few little finishing touches. And can you believe that I did not use any glitter on this card at all? I don't know what was wrong with me. I might have to go back and actually put some on. But I thought the card was so fun that it really didn't need it, which is not like me. Normally I like to have a little bit of bling somewhere, but there's no bling on this card. And look at that. It stands beautifully. It's really pretty. It's almost like it's telling a story, actually. And that's where you write your little sentiments. Okay, so for the second and third cards, we start off with one sheet of cardstock. 300 GSM or 110 pounds is generally what I use for my base cards. And we cut that down to 10 7/8 by 8.5 inches. So basically we're just cutting off a sliver. And then we just do some measuring, and please excuse Orion in the background, he's on his cat wheel yet again. We score at 3 5/8 and 7 1/4 along the 10 7/8 side. So we're basically splitting it into 3 again. And then we have to do a little bit of measuring. We measure up 2.5 inches on the left side and down 2.5 inches on the right side. Make sure you put your little pencil mark right on the edge. And we're going to cut from one of those marks to the other. So it will be at an angle like so. You can mark it in pencil if you like. You don't have to. And you can use either a metal ruler with a blade or a guillotine or a paper trimmer. I'm using the Tim Holtz one here again, just seeing how easy it is, and it's just cuts it like butter. It's magnificent. So this yields 2 Z-fold cards out of one sheet of paper. Whereas the previous one I did, it's 1 Z-fold out of one sheet of paper. So again, we're going to fold it twice, making sure that the bottom edge is flush, and we're folding first one way and then the other. So an accordion fold. And that gives you your Z-fold with 3 angles. And I'm just going to show you can fold it in the opposite direction if you like. It took me a little minute there just to figure out how to fold it in the opposite direction, because I always use the first one. But it does give you options. And it would look really cool in an album if they're both going in different directions. Like so. But I like them being the one way, so I'm just refolding it the other way. And the paper pad I'm using here is Painterly Blooms by Francheville in the 6x6 paper pad, and I get it from Spotlight. And I've pre-cut all of the widths but not the heights, and I'll give you those measurements as we go along. I'm just choosing which bits go where, and the back is plain, so you can write your sentiment or your greeting. So for the front panel, we are starting off with 3 3/8 by 3 3/8, and we are measuring up 2 1/4 on the left hand side and cutting to the opposite right top corner, and we do the opposite for the other side. And if you've got directional paper, just be careful how you cut it. Make sure that you're doing it at the top rather than the bottom or sideways. With this paper, it didn't matter. But I do just double check I'm cutting it in the right direction, because measure twice, cut once. So So that's the front panels done. And I'm just going to use tape runner this time. And with this particular card, I am not using any stamped images whatsoever. So it just goes to show that you can just use really pretty paper and a few die cuts if you need to. But the pretty paper is enough on its own as well. The thing I find with tape runner though is I can't lift it back up. Once it's down, it's down. Another reason why I prefer glue, because you can have a little bit of wiggle room. So the middle panel, we're starting off with 3 3/8 by 4.5. We're measuring up 3 3/8 on the left hand side and cutting to the top right hand corner. So all the widths are 3 3/8. And he's helping me again. And we do the opposite cut for the other side. So we measure up on the right hand side and cut to the top left corner. And I don't know how many rulers and pencils I have lost because Orion has been helping me by piffing things off my craft table. And then he takes great pleasure in shoving them underneath the bookcase behind me, which I cannot move. And yes, I have not found that pencil yet. It is under the bookcase. And it was my favourite pencil. Nicely worn in. So you can see how quickly these cards can come together. So if you just need to whip something out that you want to look really fancy, just get out your pattern papers, a bit of white cardstock, a few folds, a few cuts, and you're done. Now this third panel we also need to cut. So we're starting with 3 3/8 by 5 3/4. And we're measuring 4 5/8 up from the left hand side and going across to the opposite right hand top corner. And I don't do a reverse one for this one because I like that back panel to be blank. The only time I would use paper on the back was if I was using a coloured base cardstock. But I generally only use white. The only time I think I would use a coloured one was maybe at Christmas time. So there you go. That's all cut and adhered on this one now. So now it's just about decorating it. And I am using some die cuts from Uniquely Creative. And they are called Indigo and Violet Creative Cuts, which matched perfectly with the paper. And the paper was from Spotlight, so a completely different company. And I love this kingfisher. I love how that it had two of him, but facing the opposite direction. So it gave me an idea to actually stick him together so that he looks like one bird on both sides of the card, which gave me the idea for my third card, which you'll see in a minute. I basically used this technique on the whole card for the third card. And if you hear chattering, it is Orion. It is nowhere near his dinner time, but he wants me to play with him. So he has just wait about 10 more minutes. I always like putting something on where they put the greeting and the sentiments. I always like having something in there, if I can, just to tie the whole card together. Now, I felt the card needed a sentiment, but I didn't want to do any stamping on this one, so I am going to my sentiment binder, and I've got to figure out a different way of doing these. I'm not sure how exactly yet. And the only reason I have so many is because I've been a subscriber to Uniquely Creative for a few years, and you get one with each kit they send out to you. So I have a lot. But they do come in very, very handy. And they have dies which cut out the sentiments, and because they've got sentiments in the circles and the squares as well, and they've got dies for all of that. I'm going to be using just a sentiment strip, and I have got their die to make the cutting out of these strips nice and easy for me, because something's so thin, I for some reason have a lot of trouble cutting straight. So it's the Cutter Parts Essentials number 5. And it's just a matter of lining up the 2 little holes in the die to the little marks in the corners of the sentiment strip. It's that easy. And then just run it through. And yes, my Platinum 6 is broken, but I have contacted the company, and I've had it for a couple of years, and it's only a 12-month warranty on it. But I just showed them a photo that it wasn't closing properly, and they're sending me out a repair kit. So thanks, Spellbinders. That is awesome. So I have my little sentiment, and I've just got to trim it down a bit, and I'm going to make it into a banner just for a bit of visual effect. So to make it into a banner, I just measure the halfway point on that little strip, and then I will cut up where that mark is to the length that I want it to be, and then I cut from the corners into the cut mark, and that gives me a perfect little banner. But I found it still got a bit lost, so I am going to back it onto some of the scraps I had left over. And I was just measuring the banner there to see how wide it was, so that I can hopefully in one go cut the correct size that I need. Now that I've got the sentiment on the backing strip, I just need to also create a little banner out of it as well. But it goes right to the edge of the card, so it's a little bit of a cut-off banner. That doesn't worry me at all. I don't think it's going to be noticeable. And I'm just going to grab my T-ruler again just to make sure that it's nice and straight. And that card is done. So for the third card, I'm using a set from Altenew called Simple Flowers. And they're very simplistic flowers. Kind of gives me a bit of a spacey vibe, actually. I really like them. So I've done them in several different colours ahead of time, and I've used the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink with these ones. For the orangey ones, I've used Peachy and Sherbet. For the purple ones, I've used Heather and Violet. For the pink ones, I've used Guava and Watermelon. And the leaves, I've used Spout and Fairway. And I was originally going to put them just on the white card, but I didn't like the contrast, so I've just gotten some card out of my stash. I think it's cream card from Quill. And I'm just this time doing it by eye. I'm not using the ruler at all. They're all cut to the correct width, which is 3 3/8. And just the heights I am marking with a pencil on both sides. And this way I can actually sometimes get 2 panels out of the one cut, which is brilliant. I might just need to trim it down a little bit, but that's okay. It actually saves on paper in the long run. And this was very, very quick and easy to do. So I'm covering all the panels except that last back one. And now it's time to arrange all of the flowers. And I wanted the effect to look like the same effect I got with the kingfisher. So what I'm doing is I'm laying all the flowers on one side, and then when I get to the opposite side, I am trying to choose flowers of a similar shape so that it doesn't matter what side you look at the card from, you don't see any glaring white spots. I hope that makes sense. You'll see in a moment. And it doesn't matter if some of them haven't stamped out properly, like some of my leaves, because they're going to be covered up with the flowers and just by careful arranging. So the only lengthy bit really is just arranging all of the flowers and the leaves. And there was no colouring involved with the stamping either. It was just grabbing the stamps out of the set, and with the 2 different colours, I've just used the darker ink pad on the lighter one with another one of the flowers or centres that was in the kit. So it's a really, really versatile kit. Or set, I should say. And my apologies if my audio keeps sort of like dropping in and out. I don't know what's happening with this particular video, but it's it keeps chopping bits out on me. So if I repeat things, I apologise. I'm trying to do it in bits and pieces now instead of one whole long one. So I am basically just arranging the different colours. So I've got a variance of colours on each panel, and you'll see in a moment how I do the reverse side as well. It's really easy with shapes like this. It's not so easy with critters and that kind of thing, or for really realistic flowers. It is a bit tricky. You need to have like a base shape behind it. And that was both Cleo and Orion paying me a visit then. Can you tell it's nearly their dinner time at this point in the video? So I've quickly fed them, come back, and I've got a few minutes to finish this off in peace. So you can see here how I am putting like shapes to like shapes, and it's not noticeable from one side or the other that it is a completely different flower. That's the beauty with this kind of abstract stamp. And if you've got any glaring gaps, pop a leaf in, or a lady beetle, anything like that. It doesn't matter. The overall effect is fantastic and people will never know. And if you do have a bit that goes over, just trim it. It's an abstract flower. No one is going to know. So that's all one side done. Now I just need to do the 2 panels on the other side. And I've just fast forwarded a bit because you know what I'm doing anyway. So it's all done, and now for a sentiment on there, I have the die set for this particular stamp set, and I'm going to use the word beautiful, and this will help the card be in any occasion kind of card as well. It is a very fine script stamp, so I'm just using scrap card that I had left over. I'm going to stamp it out in Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated Ink in Guava. That is a mouthful and a half. But it matches the flowers, and I'm just going to pop it through my little Heffy Doodle mini die cutting machine, which lives permanently next to me because it is so handy and so light and doesn't skip a beat. I love it. And instead of using foam tape to layer this sentiment up, I am actually going to die cut the beautiful twice more, once out of the cream coloured cardstock, which is a scrap piece that I have, and also out of another scrap piece of white. This will give me the height I would like on the front of the card without using tiny, tiny pieces of foam tape, which would be my worst nightmare cutting out. So with this, you can attach them all together either with a Xyron machine, or if you've put some double-sided tape on the back of these scraps of cardstock first. I'm just going to use glue today because it is quite fine, and I feel I need the little bit of wriggle room that glue will give me to be able to make sure that they are stuck together nice and even. So again, I'm just using the Barely Art glue. It's got such a beautiful fine tip nozzle, it makes this a dream to do. Nice and easy. And I'm putting the white on the back of the sentiment, and I'm putting the cream coloured one, which will be on the actual card itself. So you're not going to notice any glaring colour changes with the sentiment strip either. So once they're all glued down nicely, I'm going to use the glue again to stick it to the front of the card. But here I don't want any globs of glue sticking out. So I'm just going to pat it down where there's a bit of a lumpy bit of glue and then stick it down. Thank you for the kiss, Orion. So there we go. Card number 3 is done. And you've got some room there on the back to write your greeting as well. So that's the 3 cards, the first in my series of fun fold cards. Let me know in the comments what you think and if you've given them a try. And I will be back with some more in this series. I might do a double Z fold next time, I think. And please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my videos. And please share them as well. Share the joy and help my little channel grow. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.